Welcome to the next unit in our Building APIs with Go course. So we want to focus on rate limiting. So that's just a fancy way of saying how do we restrict how many requests get sent to our server at any given moment. Now we can restrict this request access uh, per server, meaning it doesn't matter from which client the request comes from. Once we hit a total, then we will stop accepting requests. Or we can do it as per a client basis, where if a particular client sends this many requests, if they exceed that amount, then we will stop accepting requests only from them. So in this lesson, I want us to talk about rate limiting in general, and then in future lessons, we'll talk about how do we create a rate limiter per client. So for us to get this done, we need a package, and so let's install that package. And so I will say go get golang. Right? We will not be writing everything from scratch. So golang.org /x /time /rate at latest. Okay. So we have our package that we need installed. So how will we go about creating this rate limiter? Well, it's quite simple. We will use the features that this library gives us, and what we will do is to simply tell or we will simply specify how many requests we can accept. All right. So let's write the code and see how that goes. So again, this is middleware, so we will implement it as middleware. So let me go back to our middleware file, and so we will create a new middleware, and let's call it middleware rate limit. Of course, it's also on the application method. So we have rate limit, and of course, since it's middleware, it will take http.handler, and it will return an http.handler. Great. So let's continue. All right. And so what I want to do is to actually specify my limit. So I'm going to create a variable named limit, and this variable I will initialize it with rate.new limiter. Okay, and so there are two things that I must provide, which is the rate and rate R and a B. Okay, and so the B in essence is what we call, you can think of it as a bucket. Okay, and this bucket contains B number of tokens. All right, so for example, if I have B being 1000, then that simply means that I will be accepting 1000 requests. Okay, and if I hit that 1000 requests, then I will not be accepting anymore. Now, after that initial 1000 requests has been issued, then I want to later on start accepting requests again, and that is where my rate limit R comes into play. Okay, So for example, if I say 2 for rate limit and I say 4 for B, what this really means is I will accept maximum of 4 requests. So every time a request comes in, I will subtract 1. Okay, I will subtract 1. So when I get to 0, I know I have used up all my requests. Now the 2 tells me that after I have or after my bucket is empty, what is the rate? In other words, how many can I put back into the bucket? So if I say 2, all I'm saying is every second I will accept 2 new requests. In other words, I will be accepting 1 request every half second. Okay, 1 request every half second, or in other words, 2 requests per second. All right, and that's what the rate limit means. Okay, so let me get rid of that. And so this limit is how I create a new rate limiter. So how am I going to use this rate limiter? Well, let's do our return. Okay, so again, this is normal. We're going to return. And what are we going to return? Well, http dot handler func. Okay, and of course, handler func expects a function. All right, nothing new. W http dot response writer, and of course the request. All right, and so let's do that. And so what am I going to do inside the body? Well, I'm going to check to see what is the limit. How many requests have I accepted so far? So I'm going to say if limiter dot allow, limit, okay, it's limit dot allow. Okay, what does this mean? Well, allow says allow is a shortcut for allow n. So I will be allowing n requests. Okay, so when I call this, the first thing that will happen is should I, right? So it returns a bool. Should I accept this request? Okay, if it's true, it means that I have not maxed out how many requests I can accept. Now, if it's false, then it means I should not be accepting any more requests. Okay, and so I'm going to say if not true, then it means I have exceeded what I am allowed to accept. So what happens when I hit that limit? Well, I need to do something. And that's something that I'm going to do is to tell the client that they have exceeded the number of requests. So I'm going to call my method and I'm going to name it rate limit exceeded response. So we'll implement this later. WR. So the client will know that they have exceeded the number of requests. And after I have notified them, I will simply return. Okay, and that's it. I don't want to go any further. Now, if the client has not exceeded, or if the server has not exceeded the number of requests that it can accept, then we'll simply call the next dot serve HTTP. Okay, so it means that yes, we can accept the request, and so we can send it off to the appropriate handler. And that's it. So we simply need to check this allow, whether to know if we should continue or not. Again, I will have to create a variable here. All right, and keep in mind this is just created once. Okay, so this is created once. Okay, now another question that comes up is, what if I have multiple Go routines trying to send requests? Does each of those Go routines have their own allow? And the answer is no. We have a mutex that protects this allow. So if we hit our limit, then all other pending requests from different Go routines will fail, meaning that they will have the up-to-date variable that is keeping track. All right. So we use a mutex to ensure that there is a single variable, there's a single place where we keep track of how many requests are coming in. Okay, so this is our middleware, and so we need to now implement this rate limit exceeded response message. And so of course, to do that, I'm going to open up my errors.go file. Okay, and we're going to come all the way down. Then we're going to simply say exceeded number of requests, or rate limit error, right? And so what we're going to do is to simply have a message, and this message will simply be rate limit exceeded. Okay, then of course we will need to call up that error response. Oops, I went ahead of myself. Where is my method? Let me just copy this. Let me remove this. Okay, so I went ahead of myself. Let's change this to rate limit exceeded response. Okay, and so the error message will be rate limit exceeded. Okay, that's the error message. And then all I have to do is to call error response. We're going to pass in W, we're going to pass in R, but we will not pass in status conflict. We want to pass in the appropriate code, which signifies that you have exceeded or you have sent too many requests. And that is simply status, right, too many requests. And what is the number for that? It's 429. All right. Status too many requests. And that's it. So all we need to do now is to test this. But before we test it, we still need to register our handler, not our handler, our middleware in our routes. So let's go back to routes. Okay, and so currently we have app.recover panic, and so what I'm going to do, I'm going to have this be the one that gets hit first, and then inside I'm going to call app.rate limit. All right, so it simply means that if there's a panic, we'll deal with that. However, if there's no panic, we'll pass on to the app rate limit, and if the rate limit has not been exceeded, then we'll process the actual request. Right? So we're chaining our middleware. Okay, so once we have our middleware added to our routes.go file, we can now test. So let's start our server. Okay, when an error should be direct. So let me do. By the way, I guess I forgot something. I'll just say go mod tidy. Okay. One thing I didn't mention was when I went to my middleware, I didn't explicitly say it, but um, you do need to import golang org x time rate, right? Of course, this was done automatically for me by Visual Studio Code. All right, so that's something I wanted to mention. Okay, so let's test it. And so how can we test it? Well, we can just simply have a bunch of requests. So I can just say for I in, let's say 1 to maybe 6, all right? Then what I want to do, I want to actually call curl, okay, http colon localhost, all right, 4000 v1, and let's call health check. Okay, then of course let's just have done. All right, and let's see what happens. All right, so I have 6 requests, so it means that 4 should be handled quite easily. Okay, so available, rate limit exceeded, rate limit exceeded. Okay, so in one burst you can handle 4, and if we try this again, right, and again, right, you notice that we get the same exceeded, right? Okay. All right, so let's put this to 5, right, and again, right, and again. Okay, so this is a global rate limiter. Again, the concept is rather straightforward. All we are doing is specifying how many requests will be accepted as middleware, right? What is the rate? What is the number of requests, right? And of course, we could play with these numbers. You can decide to increase B as well as increase R. Okay, but for now, that's it. What is the limits? What are the limits? You create your middleware, and then you simply call next serve HTTP. And if the middleware or if the allow becomes false, we know that we've exceeded our number of requests, and so we will just send back a 429 to the client, and so they can try again later. Why is it that they can try again later? Well, it's because we have specified that after we've exceeded everything, on average, we'll be able to accept 2 new requests per second. Okay, so a second later, we should be able to accept 2 requests. All right. Okay, so let's let's try to sort of experiment with that. Let's start our server again. Okay. So if I specify 5, then I would only get 4 used. Okay. I would only get 4 used. But if after I execute this, I then execute this request again, it should go through, because it only takes a second to be able to free up for 2 more requests. Okay, I'm going to leave this there for here for now. So in the next lesson, I will move on. I want us to move on to dealing with rate limiting per client. I'll see you in that lesson.